Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We are in Las Cruces, New Mexico at Be So Creative Studios and Shop. I'm Ellen, and it's time for Tuesday Tips at 2. If you've been waiting since 2, we apologize. We've been having some technical difficulties. So I guess today it's Tuesday's Tips at 2:45. So thank you for bearing with us, and thank you for tuning in. I want to give you a few ideas today about something that really is one of the most important aspects of your sewing, and that is sewing straight seams and sewing with consistent seam allowances. And I think when it comes to coming up with a quality piece of work that you're done with at the end, this really separates the men from the boys. Can you make that seam straight? And can you make your seam allowances consistent? A seam that's sewn crooked will give you all kinds of trouble no matter what you are sewing on. If you're making a quilt and that those lines are crooked, then when you go to press that quilt block flat, it's not going to be flat. It's going to have ripples in it. One block isn't going to match up with the other block if you're inconsistent. And so your overall quilt is going to ripple. It's not going to lay flat. In garment sewing, it's even more crucial. Quilt sewing, you usually are asked to do a 1/4 inch seam. When you're doing a garment, you're usually asked to do a 5/8 inch seam, and you always need to look at your instructions before you begin. Your pattern will always tell you what is the exact width that they're counting on. If you don't sew those garment seams at 5/8 of an inch, you're going to be very disappointed when you go to try that thing on and find out it's a whole size too small because you sewed each one a little off or a whole size too big. So very important in any kind of sewing to get that seam allowance accurate. Well, if it's so important and we address it so much, why aren't we all just great at it? Well, it just takes some practice, and also it can be tricky. And because it's tricky, there are so many different methods and gadgets and accessories and features on our machine that are devoted to just this one thing, getting seams straight. And so I walked around our store the other day and thought, I wonder how many things we sell here that are just devoted to that. And just in a few minutes, I came up with about 10 things I found in our store just designed to help sewists do that. And I thought it might be fun to show you some of them today and kind of tell you what my favorite ones are. And you might have your favorite too that you might send in a comment and let us know. Becky was just telling me here that when she was little and learning to sew straight seams, she was put in front of the machine with a piece of lined notebook paper and no thread in the machine, and she had to follow the lines on the notebook paper just with the needle piercing with the holes. And I thought that was a great way to get used to how your machine sews and get to sewing straight. Now, when it comes to looking at your sewing machine, I want to zoom in here a little bit and show you what happens when you look right down here on the bed of your machine. Everyone knows, I think, that on this throat plate you have some lines etched in and some markings. They're a little hard to see, but generally on the front of your throat plate you have lines marked in inches. You're going to have 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, 5/8 inch, 7/8 and 6/8, 7/8 and 1 inch. If you look on the back, often on most brands you will see those the dimensions are in centimeters or millimeters, and so you want to look carefully and make sure you're following the right mark when you're sewing. On the Babylock machines, some of those have the front marks marked when your needle is in the center position, but some of the stitches use the needle shifted over to the left, and the back marks go for the left needle, so it can be confusing. So you want to be sure and check on your machine, be sure you're sewing the right amount there and that you're following the right measurement. The simplest way, one of the easiest tricks to use is something you have around your house probably. You've probably got some painter's tape sitting around your house. Get yourself a ruler that's maybe a quilting ruler that's got a good 1/4 inch lines marked, and you can lay that ruler right down onto the bed of your machine, line up the 1/4 inch mark with the center hole where your needle goes, make sure you've got it straight, and you can just tear yourself off a piece of painter's tape and actually just lay that tape right down on the throat of your machine. Now, I have a nice slide-on table here. Your table may not go out this far, but you'll have something down here on the bottom that you can adhere that tape to. And now I've got something really easy to see. So as I come along here, I can at least have myself something visual to see where I know I'm going to be sewing 1/4 of an inch. If you want to go 5/8 of an inch, then do the same thing. Lay a ruler down, mark 5/8 of an inch. It's a simple, easy trick because you can pull it up and remove it and replace it however you want. So that's an easy one. We actually have something here in the store, and there are a lot of different versions of this. That's an even better marking. This is called Seams So Easy. It looks like a cute little flower, but it has a really well-marked grid, easy to see, and a cutout in the middle. So what you would do is you would put this under your machine, and that cutout is where your feed dogs go, and you would align the center of your machine and your needle with that center line. And then this has adhesive on the back, so if you peel off the back, the whole thing sticks onto your machine, and it can be sort of a semi-permanent thing that you can leave down there, and then you have a nice grid that has your seams marked, and you can mark them, put some marks on there yourself too if you need some extra help. So there's several little versions of those kind of little gadgets around. Many machines have the ability to shift the needle to the left and right. So you might have to look in the manual on your machine, but here on the Bernina, the left-right shift is right here. So as I push to the right or the left, my needle actually moves to a new position. Now that can be a really helpful feature because I find it is very helpful to use the edge of the presser foot, and many of us do kind of automatically use the edge of our presser foot to align our fabric. The problem is that I don't know for sure if that is really 1/4 of an inch or what. So just for example, I'm going to lay my 1/4 of an inch mark. Well, by golly, it is not 1/4 of an inch, it's more than 1/4 of an inch to the edge of my presser foot. In fact, I think it's about 3/8 of an inch from the, yes. So my presser foot here is 3/8 of an inch away from that needle. So that's not going to help me if I'm sewing 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. But if I shift my needle over a little bit, and I'm not sure why it's not actually shifting over for me, but I may have to have this up. But if I shift my needle over to the left or right, and I'll betcha it's just not all the way down. Oh, I see. It wants me to have, it wants to make sure that I've got the right foot on. Your Berninas will always ask you. So now, when I shift over, that needle will actually shift over to be right where, oh, and I know why it's not happening, sorry here. I told it that I had in the 0 stitch plate, okay. So now you can see that my needle has moved clear over to the right there, and now if I measure from my needle to the edge, I have 1/4 of an inch because my needle has scooted over so much to the right. So on yours, depending on where your presser foot is, you can keep moving your needle over a little to the left, a little to the right. Measure it if you need to. Just go ahead and sew it out on a test. Sew something out on a piece of test cloth, and then you can look and see, did you get that exact? And mine's a little big, so I think I would shift my needle over one more because that's a little bit large. So it's very nice to test on whatever method you're using and see if you're getting the results you want. So that needle shift is just a great idea. And I want to just scan over here for a moment to show you, this is one of our more basic machines here, more of an entry-level machine, a Babylock, but this even has a way to shift the needle over. So if I'm on a straight stitch and I change the width here, you can see I can actually move my needle position over a little bit left or right. So even on this one, even some of the simpler machines have the ability to do a left-right needle shift. So look in your instruction manual and see how to move your needle left and right, and then you can just use the edge of your presser foot, shift your needle over, and get the amount that you want. It's a great little tool. I should be able to use the edge of my presser foot, and let's see if I can make a 5/8 inch seam. So here's my 5/8. I need to go 5/8 over here, so I could probably shift my needle over to the left as far as it will go, and I don't quite have a 5/8 inch there, so I can't quite go over far enough. If I had maybe a bigger machine, I could. But I could certainly make a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. It would be a perfect way to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance by shifting to the left. Okay, another nice little gadget I have here. This is called a purple thing. It's actually purple thing. And this little tool, I know a lot of you use it. It's got so many good features. It's a nice little stiletto. It's also it's kind of like an extra finger that you can use to hold your fabric down here so that you don't sew through your own finger. You can just stick it right in there, hold things down as it goes through the machine. But it also has a neat little feature on the other end. This little paddle end has an exact 1/4 inch little square down there, and you can even see the 1/4 inch marking on it. And that is a handy little tool that I can use to check, and I can see, yes, that is too big. That is not a 1/4 inch seam. So I can go ahead and re-sew that. It's a great little tool to pick up real quickly to see how you're doing. By the way, it has a little hole here that you can put a ribbon through and tie it around your neck, so you've always got the purple thing with you. So great little tool to check your 1/4 inch seam. Many brands of machines build make a presser foot that is designed specifically for 1/4 inch sewing, because a 1/4 inch seam is so common. So this is a 37 foot. It's for the Bernina. And so with this foot, when I put this foot on, it already has measured for me from the edge of the foot. It will be exactly a 1/4 inch to the center of the needle to the edge of the foot. So most brands have a version of this. This is the Babylock brand right here. And you can see same thing. It's going to be exactly a 1/4 inch from that edge to the center of the needle hole. It also has some other nice little 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch markings on it. So maybe you might consider buying a special foot that gives you that exact 1/4 inch. If you're making bigger things like 5/8 inch seam, there's another great tool. Many machines have the capacity to add a seam guide. And you may have always wondered, what are all these holes down in the middle of my machine bed? Well, those holes are designed to fit these screws, and I can actually, it comes with a screwdriver, and I can actually screw this right onto the bed of my machine. I can scoot it over a little however I want, tighten it down, and now I have a solid metal edge for my fabric to butt right up against as I sew. So I can set this to 1/2 inch, 5/8, 1 inch, whatever I need to do, and I've got that nice place for my fabric to stop, and that's a really accurate way to sew that. There are larger versions of this that even slide right here onto your table, and they have a long arm that comes up here from the edge of your table. And it also, again, has a hard edge to slide your fabric right up against, so you don't have to worry about it. So those are some that most machines will come with. The special 1/4 inch foot, they're either called patchwork foot or quilting foot or piecing foot. You might find it under different names. And the last one I want to show you is over here. I want to take you over to the Babylock Crescendo. Some of the upper end Babylocks, the Crescendo, the Solaris, the Ariel, and the Altair, have a wonderful feature on here. In addition to the other features I showed you, the special presser feet, the ability to left and right shift. By the way, here you left and right shift right on your screen settings. But this also has added a really neat feature, a laser guide beam. And on these machines, I can engage a laser beam, and I want you to see there, I actually have a beam of light that is coming down straight across my fabric there, up and down. And I actually have the ability to shift that line where I want it. So I can take it to the right, I can take it to the left. I can either put that line right where my needle is, I can put it to the right, to the edge of my fabric. I can set that wherever I like. On the Solaris, which I'm not able to show you, the Solaris has a whole grid, very similar to this one. A whole grid like this projects right down onto your fabric, and so you have an entire grid to use for that. So high-end feature, having a nice guide beam makes it really easy to sew any width of seam allowance that you want. So from high-end machine features to good old painter's tape that costs $1 or $2, you have a lot of ways to get your seam allowances nice and straight and nice and consistent. I hope you can apply some of these ideas. I hope it really turns your projects from going to ordinary to really excellent, and you'll take a lot of pleasure in the very accurate, good work that you do on your sewing. So thank you so much for watching today. We'll see you soon.